So I started my career as a data analyst,
Yep.
setting up the business intelligence systems. Hey, it's this dashboard. I give you a weekly summary of how the feature are performing, right? Like what is the
Yep.
conversion rate we're talking about over here? And then extend my study in data science more, dive more into the domain of machine learning, understanding a little bit about that. So previous employee of Capital One, working on some of the supervised learning stuffs, optimizing the call center resources, and then come to Indeed, diving over here just past the third anniversary, working on a bunch of projects, helping set up the new business pricing models. And then later on, when AI becomes a thing, I was over here, a joint effort for building this chatbot experiences for job seekers in Indeed.
Very cool. I think it's interesting how, especially like in the generative AI space and chatbots, the usefulness is closely linked to the cleanliness of your data sanitation. So any thoughts you have around there would be cool. And then also, I think the post that you put on LinkedIn that I found really interesting was the one about like memory.
Yeah.
Right.
That's mostly so I'm not an AI researcher, right? I'm a practitioner. So I was now thinking about how can we improve the model. I take the model it is and thinking about what is the way for us to, and I think for me, the model capability sort of saturated already for our everyday use. Like it's already intelligent enough. Like while witnessing the raw intelligence growing is fascinating and sometimes daunting. I mean, as a practitioner, I care more about how do I make sure. I think that's number one question. Is I think a question for this decade is context engineering. Is about how do we reliably provide the data and context to the AI so that it can do its job, right? Like properly. I think that's the major bottleneck.
Do you have a good answer?
No, I don't. That's why I'm posting that as a question. I think we don't live in an AI native world, right? A lot of the things we rely on conversational, like there's tribal knowledges existed, like knowledge island inside enterprises. Like for you to be as a software engineer, half of your time probably is just reaching out to different teams on, hey, what is your API?
Yes.
Do you have this SLA requirements that we satisfy? A lot of communication goes over there, unrecorded, of course. So you building your enterprise knowledge over there. But once you want to distill that to AI and say, help me write this particular code, you're not explicitly, right, throughput, all these implicit things. And you can't just figure that out of the box. So I think there got to be a process for us to make this as a protocol, just thinking about how this, it's basically like letting AI be more reliable in these long-running tasks.
Yeah. Have you worked with multi-agent architectures where you either, and then there's all kinds of patterns here, right? Like orchestrator agent, multiple agents within, in a pod, and they can pass tasks non-deterministically.
So I think we started, when we built this chatbot in Indeed, we started with a multi-agent mindset, and probably we're going too far around it. It's if you're thinking about it, I think prior to multi-agent becomes a thing, there's this talk about you should define very clear goals to the agent and let it perform a pre task around the task. So it's mostly about decomposition. It's about thinking about it, and then at that time it's GPT-4, right? 4 or 4.0 around that time. Hallucination is still sort of the thing. And then at that time, what we're thinking about is just breaking things out, right? If you're doing onboarding, you should have an onboarding agent. If you're doing job search, you do have a job search agent. And then you have to do manual stitches to tie these workflows together. And later on, I think one of the epiphanies for us is thinking about we probably have over-engineered the problem, right? Because now, so I think multi-agent is a thing, and I think it's going to be a long shot for us. But then for you to thinking about as human, how can you reliably manage a system that is 40 different agents, right? It takes a director in an enterprise for him to manage that. It requires 10, 20 years of working experience, knowing how to effectively manage people, and it's hierarchical, right? there's no way for an agent to rate each other and say, I think this guy going to be promoted. Like there's no such dynamics that plays inside. So I think that's why I think Devin, right, like the cognition, they said don't build multi-agent because of all the technical challenges, but also with like just human not able to supervising an over complex system.
So would you say that humans are the limit, like the human context window is the limit?
Well, so I think it's about, again, concept engineering, right? There's a bunch of logs, right, the sub agent will be looking at. So I'm not saying you should have a single agent. I'll bet my internal demo here, indeed, I was trying to push towards like people thinking about instead of over engineering, adding more agents, like what about reducing it? It's like the direction we're exploring right now, because we find like if you have 20 agents and you do manual workflow, that doesn't sound like a sustainable pattern. So here we're thinking about reducing it, right? Letting agent taking its own autonomy to solve a task. But to be very precise, right? Like we build chatbot indeed. The specific thing is about verbalizing. It's like a natural interface wrapper of what indeed core product is. I mean, a lot of the capabilities that if you want your agent to be really smart, you have to invest in the fundamental research, right? Given the user, what's the best job you can provide? Like there are some element components to it, but this is not what chatbot need to do. Like chatbot is should be taking on this very lightweight role of just saying, here's what I have gathered and let me express that. And other things should happen on the foundational layer of doing all the complex processing. And that's what the team is being transformed into do as well. But I'm just saying that, on the surface, at least, if you are like a conversational agent, you really don't have to be that complex. Because you should be offloading all these cognitive computation downwards to the back end.
How has your data science background served you in building agents?
I think it's a matter. So I think people now are realizing this, and in a hard way, it's about while everybody seems to be able to tweak in the prompt, it's a matter of doing evaluation-driven development that really matters in enterprise because about all the reliability stuff we talked about. Prior to that, right, like everybody feels empowered. It's like, oh, software engineering right now reduced to prompt change. So there's a bunch of people just coming in and then dump their like code changes only in prompt, right? Like, and then follow that. So there's a time where it's becoming very democratized and everybody just shoot their prompt change, which in turn is thinking about there's no holistic management like flow on top of it, overseeing it. So later on, I think data science is really pushing towards this paradigm of, you know what, we should be a gatekeeper, right? If you wanted to do a prompt change, we should be over here and saying, here's the quantitative analysis of this prompt change. And then we have the go, no-go decision afterwards. So I mean, as data, I think the roles are blurring, right? Like over here, like, well, anywhere in the company, like product manager, designers, engineers, data scientists, the roles blurred. You can use vibe coding to do what software engineers are doing. And then but evaluation stays the core because this is what the end user will see as the quality. So we have to make sure that, we build this evaluation suite really concrete.
Can you share about how you're running evals? Can you share about your eval stack?
Well, yeah, there's a name called Agent Companion that has been released by Google. It's on Kaggle, or it's a PDF, right? They talked about that, and we're largely in line with it. So there's a couple of like layers you could look at, right? Like if you're looking you could evaluate a single agent, right? Seeing how the agent reliably performs a given task, right? Like it's about like tool call correctness, right? It's about when should you delegate and when should you just done summarizing it, right? And there's like if you're thinking about more like a workflow thing, is like given this task, this is an expected workflow that I think you should do, like call tool A before tool B, right? That sort of thing. So evaluate on the itself. And then on a third level is more about the end results, right? Are we providing user the right answers, or in our case, is the correct job search?
Interesting. So you're using kind of that model. Are you using LLMs as a judge, or
we should do that, right? Like there's like basically like, so Elm as a judge. Okay, let me break it down, right? Like there's part of letting Elm reviewing the workflow itself. It's about the central layer about that. Like there's, yes, you can provide some human guidances, but that's like stays on the guidance level. Yes, we have people coming in and looking at the workflow and thinking about it, but more importantly, relies on Elm as judge. And then I think there's like the more quantitative way of looking at it by rubrics and matrix, right? Like something is like this tool called hit rate cannot be below a certain level, right? That's like one of the matrix we can set up. And then just majorly like Elma's judge also plays over here, right? Let an Elma judge just score about, if we're saying conversationally, tell us about how friendly they are, how helpful they are. So these are also like the matrix themselves. And then jumping onto the end user experience, you have this thumb down, thumb up menu, right? It's also thumb down. You're going to analyze about the length of a conversation. Too short, people are disengaged. Too long, you're not helping them in an efficient way. So there's also that business matrix we're tracking to make sure that the experience are optimized.
So I mean, it's super cool that you're running agents in production, because there's a lot fewer people doing that than running agents, just for their own personal uses or internal tools. But running production level agents that are consumer facing is kind of like the holy grail, right? Like that's what everyone's gunning for.
Well, so as I said, right, like it is multi-agent. It's multi-agent under the cover of a workflow. So it's not like fully autonomous. And that's something we wanted to simplify in a bit. And from the simplification process, I believe like new things will come out, because the more autonomy you give to the agent, the more uncertainty comes back. So there's a whole domain that we haven't encountered yet, and that's why we're okay right now, I think.
I'm not sure anybody has anybody. Like I feel like just we're all kind of like, we know that's what's next, but I'm not sure anyone's gotten there effectively.
That's true. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm interested, like I assume you're gathering like all your telemetry data and traces on your production agents. Are you doing any like high level analysis on that you can share about? Are you doing online evals to provide the agent feedback on its own performance, either like real time or near real time? And then
I'm not sure I understand about that part. We don't really have a reviewer somewhere sitting over there and saying you shouldn't do that. No, we don't have that rope, right? It's not, there's nobody interfering with the conversations. Only one agent expressing, right? What we're talking about elements judge is like the evaluation pieces of it, right? Not anything to do with the production system. So we like every some hour you will be sampling some of the random conversations, and so that falls into observability part, right? So you do that and you put on that and you're looking at the trace, and then every time you're bumping up some new changes, we'll again open up the dashboard and looking at, okay, is that expected matrix, right? What's going up, what's going down?
I've heard people talk about this as a model. You can have online evals, like running evals continuously on your production, and then even like making that feedback available to the agent itself, so that in the outlying poor performance cases, you can flag back to the agent as part of like a validation step.
I think that's definitely like I think it falls into the domain of design an agent that is called evaluator, like rather than that being like part of your evaluation suite. So for example, like the way I vibe code, right? I would naturally have this. I had this slash comment. I don't really rely on, again, the master agent delegating jobs to like sub agent, but I have these, like every time you got like a code out and then you were going to activate a code reviewer coming back and see, here's the spec and here's the code in this, right? Like, but all these plays, if you're thinking about it, it's very async, right? What we build as chatbot experiences are like conversational. It means to be sync, right? So you cannot just leave the user hanging there for like 20 seconds. We're not doing anything in front. So that's also why I think like a simplified structure for conversational layer makes sense, because that's where you have to be very responsive.
Yeah. Are you running custom agents in your development, in your own software engineering?
No, I have these agent in Cloud Code, right? Cloud Code allows you to sort of customize sub agents. So I have them, and I'm not doing any innovations. And I think at one time I really did, and it didn't play out well. So so now what I have right now is just 4 agents. First agent's planner, second agent executor, third agent verifier, last agent is the documenter. Probably call it the other way, but okay. And then workflow comes as, and this is where I think I learned a lot from the community, is like you don't start with a problem expecting Cloud Code just write the code. You start a new Cloud Code window and you're asking this planner agent, it's like, here's my thing. Ask me questions, right? Ask me questions.
Yes.
Have I given you enough specs? And till the end, after this round, it will summarize and ask it to summarize in a self-sufficient planning doc that some agent, another executor can come in, taking that without extra context. And this is I think typical in like requirements gathering, and also with respect to understanding the code base, like like the architecture you have to consider, and then like the testing suites which you're using over here. So all of those things I asked it to summarize into like a standalone doc. And then I open up another Cloud Code window, right, which is like context free again, or you do /clear. Right, so you make sure that all the previous conversation, they were flushed out. So you start with a fresh context window. You know your document is standalone, so you just pour that in and ask the decision. Do as the plan suggested. Do that, and then reviewer comes in, review the code, and then you just iterate over that until the point where you feel like we could do like, we could wrap it up. So okay, now I think I call it cleaner. Cleaner comes in as documenting the changes, so transforming that planning doc into a summary doc. And if we're implementing a new feature, it's like a spec about this particular subsystem, how that works. And then you also ask it to summarize the bullet point in a changelog markdown file. So you got this nice cascading about, okay, what are the development we have done before? Most likely you are never going to reference it back, but at one time you wanted to revert an action. That's probably like a good context for the AI. And then lastly, it's about commit and push, right? Just write the commit message, push it. If it's a PR, make it PR. If it's not, just push the master.
How much faster do you think you're writing software now than?
That's a really good question, right? I think it really depends on the scenarios. And I think that's where I had this thought is like, the human knowledge is like the extent of you expressing, and then like all the peripheral system that can sustain about the context, like the upper limit of how vibe coding can go. That's why I'm asking discussions. How do you reliably provide this context? If you're thinking about like everybody about enthusiast about AI, they probably start fresh, right? They're doing their own personal project. They're running on the latest tech stack, right? And then you start that, and you just wanted to do prototyping. That's perfect use cases for vibe coding. But once you're jumping back to the enterprise use, you're like, God, this is an API that it calls, but for you to test the API, you have to have like a Docker set up. And then we were testing, it's not running. You're like, why? And people are like, oh, we've added this new feature, so this API becomes incompatible. Like all of that is like the friction's happening, right? These are distributed, and you started with some incumbent code bases you wanted to optimize. I would say it's exponentially more difficult. That's where people are like, I think AI is hype. I mean, I have talked with one of the engineers in my team. Is like, are you doing web coding? It's like, definitely no. It's like, why? It's like, you know what? Cursor interface is not as intuitive as PyCharm. So there's all sorts of things that are making people saying about it. So I think I'm talking about two extremes. At one extreme, you're saying people like 10 times productivity increase, right? There's even like VC posting around one people startup that earns like 1 billion ARR. So on the extreme. The other extreme is that people are very conservative about. I think there's some tiny things that I just can't stand, right? Tolerate about this agentic experience. Like, I don't think it's working for me. But I sit somewhere in the middle, right? And again, it's like scenarios. When you're doing demo, like things that you have to spend for days is like hours. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But then for you to really contribute to production code base, you have to be very clear and very very careful. And what's on top of it, I think it's about while the cost of writing code goes down, the cost of reviewing code goes up. I think so. I mean, I don't have to elaborate on that, right? But I think this anecdote couple of days ago, I think there's one open source project, and then suddenly someone submitted a huge PR, like 10,000 line of addition. You saw the news, right? So that was the consequence of vibe coding. It's like you probably, if you are not feeling the pain of reviewing the code, you're probably just letting a reviewer feel the pain. So that's also a problem, I think. And I think that's why sort of the AI model advancements plateaus. It's like if you like OpenAI, right, and Gemini, they're like, okay, we had this mathematics, right, like Olympic level mathematics solved. But for you to solve that and review that as a human, you need days and effort, right? Like even the smallest human have to do that. So naturally, if you have even your AI can spit out things solution in seconds, you need a human verifier to be there days to verify it, and that sort of slows down this overall improvement cycle.
Yeah. Wow. I think it's interesting. Yeah, I think a lot of the like discourse over what kind of leverage the coding agents give us is missing like that context of like, hey, software engineering looks like a lot of different things. You know, if you're working on a massive legacy enterprise code base versus if you're working on your own side projects versus, you know, all the stuff in the middle, you know, medium businesses, startups. Was chatting with a friend who runs legacy team at a FANG company, and he was bemoaning just how slow his team was moving. And I was like, you know, like you're running like a 10 or 15-year-old stack.
Right.
Your oldest people are 3 years on this project, so all the original knowledge is gone. So like it takes an hour to change button color, right? Like because you got to go in and trace it all the way through the code base, make sure you're not breaking anything else. Like that's just kind of the cost of software in that context.
I mean, I had this interesting anecdote to thought about. And when I thinking about it, I thought about in the autonomous driving cases, but it's sort of applicable here, right? Like if every car on the street are a driverless car, right? You expect them to obey the rules. So your algorithm should be less sophisticated. So you almost like you're in this deep sea scenario. If you really wanted to have vibe coding work for this legacy enterprise softwares, it have to be really, really good, right? Like so if you cannot make it that like the top is like quality, people are not gonna adopt. Like you can have even a dumber AI, but help you start a brand new project to replace the current stuff rather than doing tech test redown, doing iterative feature improvement. I think just scrap it. Right? Just probably makes more sense. But I don't think any enterprise is gonna make that decision. Like who are going to be the product director and say, I'm making a bet on this, right? Like like no one would do it. So
I love that take, right? And references something you said earlier about how the relative costs change, right? Like as the cost of writing code comes all the way down, the cost of reviewing code relatively goes way up. And so, you know, whatever your take is on microservices, there's something to be said for just having, or even a monolith that's easily decomposable with very clear interfaces. And if you can keep the interfaces as static as possible, then a lot of times now it probably is easier to just rewrite a module, unit test it, integrate test it, and ship it.
But unfortunately, that's not the enterprise software it looks like, right? We know there's like something has been contributed with no comments, and you have zero ideas what they're doing. And it's touching, having like different references to different files, and again, right? It's like AI can help you explain some of the rationale behind, but again, it's about can you trust it, right? Like if you have spent 2 hours on it, and you have no clue, you really think AI is like having no hallucination on this as a mediocre code base?
At the end of the day, you have to use it as a tool, but you still have to understand it yourself, right?
Yeah, I mean, I view it almost like empowerment, not replacement.
Yes. Yep. Thanks for jumping on. This was super fun. This was exciting. I'm looking forward to your future LinkedIn posts. It was interesting. I was in San Francisco in June, and a lot of the talk then was about context management and memory, long running memory, semantic memory, and episodic memory, and kind of that being, because we're all seeing the models kind of start to taper, and so like, can we pick up that next curve? And it's probably going to be built around memory.
Bet not, right? Like my own hunch or my own self-interest, right? I think like this operating model where the Palantir really kicks in, like you need to have forward deploy engineers, right? And then be over there with your client to solve all this deep sea problem. These are not something, again, you can build from zero. You're probably building from -5 given the quality of the code. And you cannot persuade anyone to say, let's start from 0. Again, like that's a great news for me personally, because you can, if there's AGI coming the next day, every one of us, except those guys where we're reached, we're the victims. We're losing our jobs, as salary workers, right? But this trend is adoption curve is like something you saw like in the digitization of cloud migration. It works for decades. Then I have plenty of jobs to do. There's plenty of projects to participate. So I view that as a boon, right? It's not a curse for me.